Stop your kids and say, hey, a lot of people are going to get you gifts, or whatever your family situation is. These people are going to get you gifts. Let's think about how you can gift them with something. And you can have this conversation with little ones, with 10-year-olds and teenagers too.
It is the end of the year here at Maven.
At Maven.
I was going to say, not actually just at Maven. It's the end of the year for you too, if you're listening.
But actually in the church calendar, it's the beginning of the year.
Although if they were listening to this 6 months from now, it wouldn't be the end of the year. But at Maven, we're expanding our work all across the country through live events, through the podcast reach that we have, through our immersive experiences. This year we took 12 different groups of students on life-changing immersive experiences. We had groups from Missouri, from Georgia, from Florida, from California, from Nebraska, and elsewhere who participated in those worldview mission trips.
Hundreds of students.
Yeah, and life-changing stuff, and that's no overstatement. And so we want to encourage you at the end of the year to support the work that Maven's doing all across the country. And this is an important month for us because it helps us to launch into the new year with the ability to continue to expand our work and really help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty, all for the cause of Christ, which is really our way of saying, hey, the Christian worldview is a world and life view. The Christian truth we talk about on this podcast must be lived out. And then when it is, we are salt and light in this culture. So we want to really encourage you, come alongside us, partner with us, and make a donation to the work of Maven. And you can do that at our website, maventruth.com. Go to the upper right-hand corner and click on the donate button. And also, we want to encourage you to look at the Maven conferences that we're doing in the next year, 2024. Go to mavenconferences.com. We have an adult conference in Southern California in February. We have an adult conference in Texas in September. And what's cool about that is that adults and parents and they're not just coming to the conference, they're also bringing their students to those, even though they're adult conferences. Mm-hmm. And so we even have students that come to those. But then we do have a student conference in Florida in April, and you can get all the information on those conferences, those live events, which they have a huge impact. And we're doing them across the country now. But go to mavenconferences.com and click on the appropriate conference to get all that information. Okay. Speaking of the end of the year, we are in the full swing of the Advent season, the Christmas season. And so we thought, man, Christmas time is such a great opportunity to disciple our kids because of the reason for the
season.
There you go. Look at that. What a team we are, Erin.
We're so in sync.
And so everyone who our Christian friends out there, we just want to say Merry Christmas. To our secular friends out there, we want to say Happy Holidays. To our Jewish friends, we want to say Happy Hanukkah. And to our Kwanzaan friends, Happy Kwanzaa. Those would be Kwanzaans, right?
You're really culturally savvy.
We at Maven
sensitive.
we're working hard to be inclusive, more inclusive.
Really?
We get criticized for the exclusive claims that we make. And so we want to be more inclusive in this world because Jesus was inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Right. I didn't see that in our mission statement. Are you adding that this year?
Well, we're drifting. This is mission drift. And you're not supposed to let your organization do it, but to keep up with the cultural times, we need if we're going to survive, we need to become more inclusive.
No, actually, no. Maybe you should read the Bible. Maybe you should start. We're supposed to start in the scriptures today.
Oh, we're doing the exact opposite of that. And actually, if you are familiar with the work of Maven, actually, that's one of the things that we
get criticized for.
We get criticized for it, but we also take pride in that in a good sense, is that we want to stand up regularly against the cultural tide with truth and with also love and grace But sometimes in our cultural moment where we see the world increasingly, our culture becoming increasingly more secular and therefore more hostile to the Christian faith, we as Christian parents and leaders and pastors and educators and those of us who are impacting the next generation need to be grounded in the truth. And so this is where Christmas is a great opportunity to do that, because we get to, it just provides this opportunity to be very explicit about what life is all about.
Well, the good thing about our culture is that it does still celebrate Christmas. Now, how it's celebrated and what the focus is, of course, is not Christian in nature anymore. We've drifted from the roots of the holiday as a culture.
Oh man, you're going to open a can of worms when you say
Why?
that, because you're going to get a lot of Christians who will criticize you for celebrating Christmas because they think the roots are pagan. You just opened us up to more criticism.
Well, you're welcome.
Actually, we did a podcast. Did we do a podcast a few years ago on the roots of Christmas? And whether was that a podcast?
I don't think we did that.
Well, we have some good friends out there who
We've had
have
conversations
done
about
some
it.
work. If you're a Christian out there and you're struggling with, hey, are the roots of Christmas pagan? Our friend Michael Jones at Inspiring Philosophy has a great short, like 8-minute video on this one. And then also our friend Mike Winger, the Bible thinker on YouTube, has I think about a whole hour long talk on this, and they're very thoughtful. And so if anyone wants to explore that a little bit more, but
So I just showed my hand.
We're operating on the assumption that those guys are right and that Christmas is not a pagan holiday, but it's actually an opportunity for Christians to worship Christ.
Yeah. So I think thinking about our culture and how they celebrate it, we wanted to talk about, some of the ways that we can embrace the celebration, some of the celebrations that the culture does do, like something like gift giving. But of course, think about it from a Christian worldview and not just go along with it, but actually stop, reflect on it, think about the why we would do it, the good about it, and then, of course, bring our kids into that.
So a passage that we want to read here at the outset of the podcast, and one that we want to encourage you to incorporate during Christmas, is Philippians chapter 2. And actually, starting in verse 5, Paul writes this: "Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus." And then in verse 6, he's going to get into the incarnation. It's so beautiful here. "Who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped." Or I think is it the ESV that talks about he didn't take advantage of that, right?
For his own benefit or advantage, yeah.
Yeah. That's a kind of a more modern way to understand this idea of, grasping. It's not that he didn't understand, right? Or that, but
which is how we think of it.
Something to take hold of, to grasp and take advantage of. So he's God in human flesh, but did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Right? So that is a Christmas passage, if you will. One of the greatest moments in human history, if not the greatest moment in human history, is God became man. Right? The incarnation. This is what we celebrate at Christmas. This is why we worship. And so this is a great passage to read in our Christmas services at Christmas Eve with our families, to remember the meaning of this, the deep significance of this holiday. But I want to draw your attention to something that Paul says right before this, because he's actually grounding some behaviors and a mindset in the incarnation of Jesus and what it represents. And so he actually, in verse 1, he says, so if there's any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. So there's this unity that he's talking about here in the church. And then he says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. And so he's saying, don't do anything from selfishness, but look to others' interests as well as your own. And then he gets into verse 5, right? Have this mind among yourselves, which is in Christ Jesus. And so the motivation, the grounding for this is in the example of Christ, is Christmas, is what God does in this great moment of humiliation where God descends and takes on human flesh, and then does so in order to serve his creatures. This is stunning. It really is. It's stunning what God has done. And it then lays out for us a model. And so Christmas can be an opportunity for us to not just say, hey, God became man and celebrate the incarnation, but to also press further into that, to kind of go farther up and further in to the meaning of that, the significance of that, the theology of that, and then the implications it has for our families. And one of those implications that we think is a really good opportunity for us to teach on is how to give gifts, right? And so here you have God giving the greatest gift to humanity, himself, his son, in human flesh, the second member of the Trinity, in order to serve us. And so gift giving during the holidays, sometimes we bemoan, right? And appropriately so, the materialism, the commercialism, and those kind of things. But at the same time, we don't want to just throw all that out because there's actually some really good things about that. Gift giving is a good thing. And our kids at Christmas have an opportunity now to be really intentional. There was an opportunity here to maybe shape some character and to point to the example of Christ and what he's done in order to motivate us to give gifts to other people.
So on a practical level, the way we've tried to infuse Christmas with meaning in all kinds of ways, but in this meaning of gift giving, is that when our kids were young, we started to have them participate in gift giving, not just in gift receiving.
And when you say young, how young are you talking about?
Well, gosh, I'm trying to think, but I think at
Your
least
memory's failing you
2 or
in this.
How dare you?
These advanced years that you've advanced to.
How dare you? I'm thinking 2 or 3 because it's at the point where they become aware that people are giving them things, and that age is so fun because they're so excited about gifts, especially, if they're not getting them every time you go to Target. If you actually...
Wait, you did a podcast on not going to Target. You don't go to Target anymore. You're going to have to change that analogy.
I know, it's just the easiest
Change
one
that
to give.
illustration.
Oh, gosh.
Because everyone who listened was so convinced by that episode.
Every time you go to Walmart and Walgreens, I'm trying to think of all the stores we go to. But in Costco, if every time you go out, you don't let your kid buy something that you, of course, foot the bill for. But if you actually make them wait for celebrations or things where gifts are given, then it is so fun when they're 2 and 3 and 4. They're just so excited about things.
Yeah. And so my point in all of this was to say, hey, we've actually done this. Started it pretty early with our kids, 3-4 years old, in terms of putting an emphasis on them giving gifts. Yeah.
And them sacrificing in some way for the gift. So,
Right. Okay. You don't skip over that too quick. That's such an important part of this.
yes.
Because it's not just, hey, we want you, to give a gift to your brother or sister for Christmas, and here's the money, or
Here's
we'll
the
take
$20. We'll take you to the toy store, pick it out, and then you wrap it up for brother or whatever.
No, a big part of this is that they're quote unquote paying the price.
That they're sacrificing something of themselves for other people, just like grandma and grandpa sacrifice to buy them the presents they receive from them. This is how we learn appreciation. This is how we learn gratitude, is because we start to see, all this stuff that we're given, all this, the home we live in, all these things, this is gradually that we learn this, are because of sacrifices of other people.
Yeah.
And so this can be in all kinds of ways, but we wanted them, even at a young age, to have some buy-in, even if it was a sacrifice of their time, like, no, we're going to stop and make this card or make this thing.
And so like at 4 years of age, it might be making like a little ornament to give, or baking something. I mean, there's all kinds of things that they can do at those ages.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be buying something, although I think by the time they're 4 and 5 and they're hopefully starting to work a little bit and earn a little bit of money, that it's appropriate for them to pitch in money too.
Yeah.
Especially the money that they've worked for and earned, and then let them spend it on things.
Yeah, there are, and the reason we do that is not because we are, we need help, financially or something like that. I mean, I want people to think about the why behind that, because it's so good for our kids to work hard and earn money, right? And that the lesson of developing a work ethic, connecting hard work with general financial success, like you see in the Proverbs. That's all good stuff. Those are good lessons. But think about the lesson when you work hard for money and you earn that money and then you use it to buy things for others. That has a way to shape character, right? Yeah. That's one of those events, one of those behaviors, one of those moments that can really have an impact on a kid's character. Now, I worked hard and I earned this, and so I deserve it in that sense, right? I merited that, and now I'm going to take it and I'm going to use that to give a gift to someone else. That has an impact on character, and Paul's admonition, right? Don't just think about your own interests, but the interest of others. Do nothing out of selfishness.
And that this is actually one of the key ways that we find joy in life, is by giving to others. And when we let kids earn or work or make something, and I don't mean something they really work on, not like a silly thing, but something that it's like, no, they really put some time into it, and encouraging them to do that. And then you give that and you see that brings someone joy. And then the joy that you experience from that is not something you can just teach with words. They really have to experience that kind of joy when you sacrifice for someone else and you see the blessing that it is to them.
And it is not immediate. It's not like that. Those lessons don't come like, okay, one Christmas you do it, and then the kids are like, oh, yep, I got it. I bought, oh, this is the greatest thing
Learn
ever.
that
right?
lesson.
Yeah. Now, sometimes you get glimpses of that. But again, it's like so much of discipling kids and raising kids is sowing before years down the road you reap the harvest. But that's what we've seen, and I think we begin to see it more so as the kids have gotten older, is that we've really pushed them, encouraged them, helped them, challenged them to give gifts and particularly to their siblings. At Christmas, it's like all the kids will buy gifts for mom and dad and also for their siblings. And of course, in our house with 5 kids, there's a lot of siblings, so you got to get creative a little bit. But what we've seen is that as they get older and the more they do that, the more they taste the goodness of that, and they get to experience the joy of giving that gift and blessing someone else, they take more joy from it. And this year, I've just noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this about the kids, but they've talked a lot about buying each other gifts. And they've already, multiple kids have told me like, oh, I already got, Micah his gift. I already got Paige her gift. And they're thinking about it. And I think they're taking more joy each year in giving gifts to each other and blessing each other.
So I think giving some just practical ideas like that we have the kids give gifts to each other is I think helpful and will help you to see kind of our motivation for urging you to do this. And it can look different in different families. Of course, we have, there were 7 people in our family, so that can be an expensive thing if your idea of giving gifts is, in a much higher financial range maybe than what was realistic for us, or it depends what picture you have.
Don't pretend, honey. Your tastes were very expensive. The kids struggled to buy you gifts at times. Oh
my gosh!
We want to be real. Let's be real.
Yeah, we should ask the kids.
Actually, let's keep
whose gifts are more pricey that are on lists. And I guarantee
I try to provide a broad range of people because sometimes I want our kids an opportunity to experience
to really sacrifice.
When they see how blessed I am, when they get me that one thing I really want, they will experience a level of joy unbeknownst to them.
Yes.
Until then.
And the joy you receive from seeing how they had to sacrifice so much to buy that.
Talk about developing their work ethic when they have to slave away.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so ideas on this. So the point being that when you're thinking about Christmas, when you are approaching Christmas as we are now, that you stop your kids and say, hey, a lot of people are going to get you gifts, or whatever your family situation is. These people are going to get you gifts. Let's think about how you can gift them with something. And you can have this conversation with little ones, with 10-year-olds and teenagers too. Even if you've never done it before, you can say, you know what, I didn't think about it before, but the more I think about it and think about how much you've been given by these people, or your siblings, your grandparents, whoever it is, maybe it's friends that you get together with every Christmas, whatever your family situation is. But say, I've been thinking, I think it would be good and mean a lot to these people, whoever it is, to have you give them something that's not from me and dad, but it's actually from you.
Yeah, and I think in our home we haven't made that optional.
Yeah,
and the way we've communicated it isn't like you have to give the gift, but it's just communicate in a way like, hey, you need to get gifts for your siblings. And then to give the why behind it. But it's not actually optional. And early on, when kids are a little, and it's not just early on when they can be selfish. Later on, they can be selfish too. But until you're developing that and honing that and, cultivating that in them, that's not always met with a good attitude. And this is, I think we have to regularly remind ourselves this. As parents, a lot of what we do that's good for our kids is not immediately met with acceptance and joy and happiness. But that's a deterrent for a lot of parents. A lot of parents may try this. Okay, let's try this, and the kids aren't happy about it because maybe this isn't part of the culture of your family. You haven't done this. Kids might not be happy about it, especially if you're trying to institute this when the kids are 12 and 14 and 16 and they don't want to necessarily save up and use their money to get their siblings gifts. This may be something that you have to kind of keep pushing and nudging them towards.
Yeah, we do tend to believe sometimes these false ideas like, oh, if we do stuff that's good for our kids, they'll appreciate it or they'll respond happily. I don't know, because I don't know where we get this idea and we kind of fall into it, but we all do that. Because we'll have this expectation that they'll be like, okay, this is great, or that they'll have a lot of joy doing it. But we know in reality, just like with eating, that you might not be as excited about broccoli or some of the foods and fruits that our bodies need. It's really good for us to eat, as opposed to you're more excited about the chocolate cake dessert. But we know our body needs the good stuff. And it is this underlying expectation, and we do have to think about it. So with that in mind, and actually their response, I think, okay, say you start doing this, or say you're like, oh no, we do this, we make them, do something. If when they say they're making stuff or even buying stuff, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, no big deal, or it's like their attitude when it's done is like, oh, here, I finished it, whatever. My guess would be they probably didn't have to sacrifice very much for that, and you might want to make it a little tougher on them. Like, well, last year you spent $5 on your sister. I think this year you could probably spend 10 because you're 9 now and you can earn $10 pretty easily. So you probably should spend a little bit more this year.
Yeah. And
make it not hurt, but make them feel it, because that's the whole point is that they're sacrificing for
that you want them to get a sense of what it costs.
So we're open to all kinds of things and what this could look like, but the encouragement is that you have your kids participate in giving, whether it's buying gifts for people or making gifts for people. Maybe it's sacrificing time. It might be sacrificing money, maybe sacrificing time, maybe sacrificing, work. I don't know, something like that. So thinking about something that they can do or give, especially to the people who are giving to them. But then also even thinking outside of that as well.
Yeah, and so I think kind of trying to broaden the practical application here. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking, well, one thing families could do is say, hey, let's pick one neighbor or a couple of neighbors, and together as a family, let's maybe make some baked goods, or let's make some bread, or let's put together a basket of treats that we are all going to pitch in on, not just mom or dad are going to go in the kitchen and do this, and then we're going to walk it over, but everyone participates.
Or mom and the girls.
Yeah. That never happens in our home.
You said mom and dad. I'm like, what?
I do lots of cooking in this house.
Baking?
Well, baking, not so much. But I do so much cooking that it makes up for the lack of baking that I do.
But yeah, we've done this where we've baked things and then gone around to neighbors and because this is a great time of year, obviously, that it's a good time to meet your neighbors if you haven't, just to reach out and say hi, but say, oh, Merry Christmas, we made bread, or whatever it is. But yes, having your kids a part of that in that way. And actually going back to the gift giving one, I thought one idea too is, of course, to draw names in a family. So if there's 4 of you or 10 of you, maybe it's better to everybody picks a name, and then for that person, the one person they pick, that it's kind of a bigger gift, and you kind of go all out for that. There's all kinds of ways you can do it, and all kinds of families that are different. But again, putting some heart and thought into the gift giving. Another way to have your kids participate in the giving at Christmas time is, we've talked about this before on the podcast, but our family for years has had a giving box. And when the kids would earn money or whatever, and when we're teaching them to save some, to give some, and to spend some, we kind of had those 3 categories. When it was time to give some. Sometimes we would give to our local church or whatever, but sometimes, and we've had this giving box for years. It was putting money in the giving box, and sometimes the giving box money would accumulate over months and months.
Yeah, and we literally had a wooden box. It's kind of a cool looking wooden box.
Yeah,
and we just named it the giving box, and
then
kids would put money in it.
And the giving box we kept in particular for when times of need came up that we became aware of. So maybe it was at Christmas time. There were times where we took the giving box money. We knew about a family who needed presents for their kids or money for groceries or whatever. And then all the giving box money would go for that. And this was, the $2 that the 8-year-old had put in the box over 6 months. But all the kids had put money in it. So having the giving box, and now this is something the kids have all put money into, and then we're giving it together as a family to something.
And we would sometimes contribute to it as well, especially as we saw needs come up. But the idea was that the whole family is giving, and actually that regular giving, right? And this is, of course, something we would say not just for kids, but for adults, right? A regular habit of giving cheerfully. The Old Testament concept, right, of tithing seems to be transformed in the New Testament with giving with a cheerful heart, and so that we continue to give to the work of God, to His kingdom. But it's all of us contributing, and so it can accumulate in a significant amount. But then Christmas time is just a great opportunity to look for a need that's out there to then contribute to.
And I've noticed in our kids over the years that when they actually have participated in the giving part of it, and for the giving box, when that's their money in there, of course they have no idea how much more we put into something, but they know what they've put in. And then you buy presents for a family that needs it, or you buy groceries for a family that needs it. And then they get to participate in giving that. This is the joy that I talked about, but also just the goodness of giving to others, that if mom and dad just, okay, let's go to the grocery store, we're going to buy this family some stuff, and that's good. But it's different when they have investment in it too. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so there's the giving box. That's one idea. There of course are all kinds of opportunities at Christmas time. Operation Christmas Child, Project Angel Tree. These are wonderful organizations, and they do wonderful work at Christmas time. So maybe your family, your church does Operation Christmas Child or Project Angel Tree. So have your kids be a part of buying the stuff that goes in the box, or buying the presents that's going to go to the child, the Project Angel Tree child. Have them invest in it too.
Yeah. And we've done that with our kids, where they get a box, and maybe each member of the family has gotten their own box, and you are responsible to kind of stuff that with things. And so we've gone to the store with the kids, and they get out their money and they pay for the gifts that they put in that shoebox.
And thinking of that, going to the store with the kids, of course, when they were little, there were times where they had $3. And so when we got to the cashier at Target, when we used to shop there.
Thanks for clarifying that. When we get there and they'd only have $3, it would cost $15.
Yeah, you
would tell them, too bad.
Sorry,
Micah, too bad. You apparently you didn't work hard enough, and you made it a really hard lesson.
Oh my word!
Oh, no,
of
that's
course
not what happened.
We would cover.
Oh, that's right.
The extra,
we would cover.
And they wouldn't know. I mean, ignorance.
Oh
is
no!
bliss.
After you would give them that harsh lesson, I would come in and I'd be like, "Hey, Dad,
the
will
Savior.
help out here."
Yeah, Dad always tries to be the good guy.
We just wanted to give both sides of a God who makes you deal with your own consequences, and also a God who's loving and kind. So
you got to play the loving and kind role.
I got to play the loving.
Sounds about right.
It just feels more natural for me.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so ridiculous. So, of course, when kids are little, you can cover the extras so you're doing it with them, you're teaching them, but even if they invest a little bit, even if it's in the packing of the box, like, no, that's your job. This is your box you're sending to this little kid who might not have a mom and a dad. And, you're explaining to them the situation. So there's all kinds of ways, but just to bring our kids into the part of Christmas that is a reflection of what God has done for us, the gift, the sacrificing, the sacrificial love, and let them participate in that, not just as receivers, but also as givers.
Maven exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. To find out more, check out maventruth.com.